Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 5, Those Who Would Lead.
Science fiction, fantasy, time travel. This is the Stories Told podcast, talking about worlds of stories told, from movies to TV shows and, of course, books. I'm E.W. Barnes, fiction author and avid fan of great stories. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds, thousands of stories told. Let's begin.
The first season of The Rings of Power consists of only 8 episodes. 3 more episodes and we're done for the season. So before we dive into this week's episode, I want to invite you to help me choose the next series or movie that I will be reviewing. In the show notes below, there is a link to a private Facebook group where I have posted a poll, and you can choose one of the options listed. I've really been enjoying She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, and Andor has been really interesting. Or you can offer a suggestion of your own. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing what you'd like to hear about next. Today, I'm going to talk about episode 5 of the new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power, which is streaming now on Amazon. And as you probably know, beyond here there will be spoilers. So if you've not already seen the show and don't want to know what's going to happen, now is the time to click over to one of those autumn music videos. I love those. They're so nice. This episode is entitled Partings. And as you can probably guess, there was a lot of movement in this week's story. From the Harfoot migration, to the gathering of the orcs in the Southland, to the might of Numenor. I have to confess I was really engrossed in the story, and didn't take as many notes as I usually do. We'll call that a win for the episode. This episode touched on all the main storylines. All the folks in Numenor, Arondir and Bronwyn, Nori and the Stranger, and Elrond and Durin. In Numenor, Miriel has agreed with Galadriel's request to take Numenor's armies to Middle-earth to help the men in the Southlands fight Sauron's orcs. But not everyone is happy about it, and the anti-elf sentiments rear their heads in a variety of ways, from Pharazôn's son objecting to what he sees as an elf ordering Numenor's ruler, to Elendil's daughter not wanting her family to go away to war and possibly dying. There's some conflict with Halbrand, who at first refused to return to the Southlands, but at the end of the episode joins the forces of Numenor. I'm still not so sure about him, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The thing that stood out for me in this storyline was Miriel's father, Tar Palantir, warning her not to go to Middle-earth, a warning that she ignores. The visuals are still gorgeous. It is a magnificent and beautiful scene when the ships of Numenor sail out of the harbor. In the Southlands, Adar and the orcs are within striking distance of the tower in which Arondir, Bronwyn, and the refugees are sheltering. Arondir has delivered Adar's message to them, that they surrender and swear fealty to him or die when the orcs attack. Bronwyn urges the people to fight, but instead half of them leave to find Adar, arguing that their ancestors survived by swearing fealty to the dark powers. What stood out for me in this storyline was that Adar could tolerate the sun, which means he's not an orc or a creature of the great darkness, but someone who is becoming evil, like Smeagol did when he took the ring. Another thing that stood out was that Bronwyn's son Theo remained at the tower with his mother. Up to this point, he's not been what you might call the most dutiful son. He broke into his neighbor's property, stole the sword hilt, and snuck out to get food after his mother argued against taking the risk. I got the feeling that Arondir's risking his life to save him made him rethink things. Theo allows Arondir to teach him how to shoot a bow, and eventually shows him the hilt that the orcs are after. Arondir recognizes it as a key that was used in the past to enslave Theo's ancestors. Finally, there is a scene where one of the villagers promises to serve Adar calling him Sauron. But Adar does not respond to that name, looking almost angry or afraid. Adar forces the man to show his loyalty by murdering a boy. The camera cuts away as the boy is begging for his life, but it's still a disturbing scene. We join the Harfoots on their continuing migration, and I'm still trying to connect the dots about the stranger. There were a few things that stood out for me in this storyline. One was the stranger telling Nori that he was a peril to her and the Harfoots, which she denied, insisting that he was good. Another was Poppy Proudfoot's singing a traveling song, which was reminiscent of Bilbo's song, The Road Goes Ever On, and included a line about not all who wonder or wander are lost, echoing the poem that Bilbo wrote for Aragorn. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all those who wander are lost. The old that is strong does not wither. Deep roots are not reached by the frost. From the ashes a fire shall be woken. A light from the shadows shall spring. Renewed shall be blade that is broken. The crownless again shall be king. The third thing that got my attention was the stranger protecting Nori and her family from wolves, which had better CG this time around than the wargs of Adar. Maybe I was too engaged to notice. That's a possibility. The stranger struck the ground with his arm, which scared off the wolves, but injured the stranger. Nori found him healing himself with what looked like ice. When she touched him, the ice began to consume her. And I can't help but remember that at the beginning of the series, Galadriel found a symbol she associated with Sauron in an ice cave. As a writer and a reader, I always take note of how a character describes themselves. The stranger said he was a peril to the Harfoots, whether it's the peril of uncontrolled power or of an evil nature. We don't know yet. We finally get back to Lindon, the home of the High King Gil-galad, and get to see more beautiful elven costumes and designs. I would love to go to a Middle-earth theme park based on these designs. I would wander the elven land, admiring its beauty, maybe meditating. It would be awesome. As it turns out, the High King knew about the mithril the dwarves had found and wanted Elrond to confirm its existence. He asks Elrond to break his oath to Durin that he would not tell anyone about the mithril, and the request left a bad taste in my mouth. The king claims he needs the mithril to save the elves, but I think a good leader would be able to find or at least explore another way to get what he needs without requiring someone to break a vow. Fortunately, Elrond is able to find that way for his king without breaking his oath to Durin. There are some wonderful scenes between Elrond and Durin that I enjoyed very much. The relationship between the two is delightful. Finally, one other thing of note took place in the episode. A group of women are seen examining the crater left by the stranger, aka Meteor Man. They're wearing white robes and adornments that gives them a ritualistic look, as if they're priestesses or spiritual leaders. One examines the remnants of the crater and looks up with a grim or possibly angry expression. It's not a happy face, and it's slightly scary. But what does it mean? I scanned my memory for anything in Tolkien's works that might suggest who these priestesses are, and while admittedly I may have forgotten something, I've got nothing. For now, the priestesses are another mystery in this series. So what do we know at the end of this episode? There are a lot of pieces in motion, and this episode left me with more questions than answers. What awaits Miriel in Middle-earth? What will await her when she returns to Númenor? And we still don't know who Sauron is. Is it Halbrand? Is it the stranger? Is it Adar? Or someone we haven't seen yet? I'm leaning towards Halbrand, and my reasoning is this. He is in Númenor, and he's a blacksmith, and we know that Sauron crafted the Ring of Power, so he would need to know blacksmith's trade in order to be able to make the Ring of Power. If Sauron was trying to take over Middle-earth again, he would need to be in Numenor to stop them from going to Middle-earth, because they were the most powerful foes at the time, the ones who could possibly stop him. His resistance to returning to Middle-earth, I think, might have stemmed from not wanting to leave Numenor, which is where he needed to be in order to stop them from being the power that makes him not able to engage in his conquest. And then in the end deciding to go to Middle-earth, otherwise people would have suspected him. Why didn't he go? What's the story here? Or not respected him and listened to him when he tried to do whatever he needs to do in Numenor. So right now I'm leaning towards Halbrand as Sauron. However, the stranger's healing himself with ice, and Nori being hurt by ice, makes me wonder about the stranger as well, and the fact that he called himself a peril. So I can't really definitively say what or who is Sauron. I'm leaning towards Halbrand, but I'm open to the stranger. I titled this podcast episode, Those Who Would Lead, because in each storyline we see would-be leaders struggling with their roads. Miriel and the anti-elf sentiment, Bronwyn and the refugees, Nori taking the lead with the stranger and possibly risking her life, and the High King trying to save his people with questionable choices. On a scale from 1 to 10, I give this episode a 9. And so, the questions yet to be answered are, what will happen next in the Southland? Who is the stranger? Who are the priestesses? And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for being here. Join me next time when we talk about The Rings of Power, Episode 6. And don't forget to go to that Facebook group and let me know what your suggestions are for the next series to be reviewed. Thank you again. We'll see you next time.